So, so welcome, welcome, welcome. Thank you so much for being here. This is exciting. So we are here with Lee Putman, and Lee is an amazing artist who I interviewed on the
Oh,
podcast, and I will drop that link in the chat in a second. So Lee is going to do some sketching, and in fact, I have Lee's reference photo here. I'm going to put that in the chat right now. If you want
yazza.
to sketch along, you can open that on a different tab and sketch along with Lee. So Lee has prepared a sketch and is going to do some inking on the sketch. Is that right, Lee?
Hell yeah, man. Let's do it. Shall I show you the sketch?
Yeah, go ahead.
Let's do it. All right. So I'll move my. Oh, sorry. Got a little thing in the way, so I can't see my
So
settings.
before you do that, I'm going
Okay.
to say my name is Bethan. Here's Karina. We're going to be the people in the chat. And what I'd love for us to do is just to have a conversation with Lee. So if you have any questions, put them in the chat and I'll ask them and Lee can answer while sketching. All right, so I'm going to disappear off the screen and we can go for it. Oh, there we
Hell
go.
yeah.
Tell us about this insect, Lee.
Yes. Okay. So, guys, I'll do a proper introduction if you want of myself in a
Yeah,
minute.
do it.
But yeah, so basically, I figured we'd just do a wasp. So I had an extra drawing of this wasp. So I'd done this sketch beforehand in my A4 sketchbook, and then I wanted to do the drawing of it, and then I couldn't find the sketchbook because, as I'm sure you all are like me, we have loads of sketchbooks everywhere. And then so I drew another one, but in A3. So I have one that I finished, and this will be the kind of the end result that I'm going to aim for. So it's this kind of hatching, fine line, inked detailed drawing of the wasp. And I assume you can all see the reference image now.
Yeah, I've put the
Yeah.
link in the
Oh,
chat
in
for
the
the
chat.
reference. So if anyone wants
Nice.
to find it, they can go there and just shout out if it gets lost in the chat and I can replace it.
Nice.
Look at
Okay.
all that
So
detail.
yeah, so this is so I guess I'll introduce why I was going for the fine line today, rather than say a watercolor or a painting
Yeah,
for
great.
this. But just because, I mean, partly it's because there's no way that I'm going to be able to give a coherent like conversation if I'm doing watercoloring as well. That it's I can't do it. But in terms of um, the hatching side of it, it's quite. I think when you get an understanding of how we're using the lines and the kind of the rhythms and movements that we can do, which I'll go over in a moment, it's quite easy and therapeutic to just kind of go through and fill in a drawing like this. The reason I chose this style for that reference image is because I think it just matches the kind of the I guess the aesthetic or the I don't even know if theme is the right word, but the impression, sorry, I get from the reference image is that it's like a scientific pose. It's very high detail. It's singular. It's there's no background. There's no cause. So I feel like it's very focused on the anatomy of a
Yes.
wasp. Whereas, say something like I don't know if I just switch cameras for a moment. There we go. Something like this behind me is is really about movement and illusions with figures and bodies and trying to capture something a bit more elusive and playful, I think is kind of lends itself to paints in that sense. And that's what I would do uh with with watercolors and gouache and mixed media as well, with something that kind of is a bit more playful in that sense. But something that's a bit more kind of particular and very focused and detailed, I'd probably normally just go with a simple ink drawing of details. So I have that's the end result. That's kind of where we'd want to get to. And for the preparation of it, this was the this was the sketch. So it's I'll zoom in a moment, but this is fairly kind of rough, I would say. The priority here for the type of stuff that I'm going to be showing you today is just making sure that all the right things are in the right place and the right size. So
Mhm.
that would be my definition and understanding of proportions. Would be just making sure that each of the things that we're trying to represent are the right size, right shape, and in the right place
When
relative to
when
each
you're
other.
doing that, Lee, when you're doing an undersketch like that, do you measure things out? How do you get those things in the right place?
Okay, so the first thing I do is I understand that I'm not perfect. So I have to just accept that I'm probably going to make some mistakes for sure. I get that out the window, but mostly it's just visual measuring. So the way that I would approach it is I would draw, I would have like a rough idea on a page of how large I want it to be and where I want it to be on the page. So usually it'd be nice to center things, but I think you'll notice from the reference image that because of how the legs are shaped, that this side, the kind of the wasp's right side, sticks out a little farther. So it's a little difficult to frame it in the center of the image. But the idea that I would go with is I would just do a light sketch. In fact, let me get the reference image up in front of me, and then I can show you. Uh, it's my fault. I should have got it for myself. It's in the chat, you said, right?
Yeah, it's in the chat. Let me do it again.
Let me see. Let me just get the reference image up, and then I can show you guys how I approach it. Here we go. Perfect. Okay. Thank you, Bethan. All right. So to get to here, oh, sorry, other images. Where have we got? Um, yeah, there we go. Okay. That'll do. So to get to there, the first part is I kind of take a very loose approach to building the image. And for me to do that, I just make sure I hold the pencil very, very loose, usually towards the middle. And I make sure that I can edit and adjust the image anywhere I need to at any point without committing to any shape or idea straight away. That's really important. And a lot of it is about kind of what you're seeing, how you're thinking about it, and then the movement kind of comes a little bit afterwards. So the idea I kind of say usually is that I should be able to draw this with your hands. It's just how I would guide and instruct you. But I would think that internally, obviously, for myself, but I'll speak it out loud as I'm going. So the idea is that, say I've got the wasp in front of me here. I would just have like a rough marker here, for, say for the top. I'll draw a bit heavier than I usually would. So a rough marker for the top and a rough marker for the bottom, say here. And I would say I know that the head is roughly there and the butt is roughly there. I don't know if wasps have bums, but we'll
Abdomen.
say the big bulbous bum. So we know, and we can kind of make references for ourselves. So if I say that halfway roughly of the wasp is where that big bum breaks up the body, and then you've probably got the other half here is the head and the other top part of the body. I could probably separate it like that. And the way that I would go about tackling the whole image is I would first do the biggest shape, which is the rough contour or outline of the whole thing that we're trying to draw. So the rough hole shape would probably be something like, I don't know, this this kind of image here. Something like this. That would be a very, very rough outline. And the reason I do this is so that I know if I've made a wrong judgment straight away about how I'm going to fit everything on the page. And the mentality of this for me is no different to, do you remember when we used to practice when we were kids that trying to do like uh like writing like this, for
Hmm.
example, if I'm
Bubble
writing
wrap.
happy birthday, for example, bubble that, thank you, yes. If I'm doing this and I'm thinking, oh, I want to write happy birthday. And when you're a kid, you don't really think about spacing. So you just go nuts on it. And by the time you get to here, you're kind of writing, all right, come on, I need to do this and whatever this, right, and whatever. And it gets really tiny by the end. But I kind of think of it like this. So the reason I don't commit to anything straight away is because if I've got it wrong, I've drawn the butt or the bottom half of the wasp this big and it just doesn't work, then I think, oh, okay, cool. Then I can just go in and edit it. I can either rub this out to avoid confusion, or it's so light that it doesn't actually disrupt my approach. So just a little summary so far. We're looking at right shapes, right size, right place. And then we're looking at drawing the biggest shape first, which is the rough outline of the whole image. That's the summary. Then the process is fairly um, I don't say mechanical, but kind of fairly simple in terms of step by step. And it's iterative. We build on the last step by just drawing the next biggest shape. So we've drawn the whole thing as a rough outline. We then draw the next biggest shape, which is this big butt. We draw the next biggest shape, which is this kind of back and shoulders that the wasp is kind of displaying here. The next biggest shape would probably be the head. And notice it's very loose, like halfway down, like really simple. You can hold it kind of any way you want. The next biggest shape from here would probably be one of the wings, in terms of surface area. So we could probably kind of roughly put that into place. Again, I'm drawing heavier than I normally would just so it shows up on camera. Normally it'd be very light, like maybe kind of one of these. Really light usually. And then the other wing is probably about as big. And then the next biggest shapes are probably the legs. So I'd go in and I would just try and articulate those as best as I can. And I'll often describe any kind of art form as a language. So I might use certain phrases like articulate or grammar or punctuate or stuff like this. So if I do and you want me to clarify, please just let me know and I'll clarify. But this is the kind of the way I approach it. It's just biggest shape, next biggest shape, next biggest shape. And this does a lot for proportions. And in terms of kind of the way to approach image making, or a way to approach image making, sorry, I try not to talk in absolutes, but I find that this kind of works across all mediums. And with painting, with any kind of analog medium, like drawing, painting, charcoal, whatever, this works. But it also works the exact same way with digital medium as well. Like I draw on my iPad in Procreate quite a lot as well to kind of
Mm,
flesh out and sketch ideas. And this, yeah, this approach is just, I find it's the easiest way to, you can kind of switch and put a pen in your hand and you're going to do the exact same thing. I can put a paintbrush in my hand and I'm going to do the exact same thing. I can put a digital pen in my hand and I'm going to do the exact same thing. It's just understanding how you think first, and then we can understand how the medium works afterwards.
yeah,
You know, that would be my, yeah, approach for that. So,
lovely. Thank you.
in no worries. In terms of how to get to the point that I've got to here, uh, sorry, I should have had a sticky note. There we go. In terms of how to get to here, we're kind of pretty much doing this, is that every big shape that we're doing, we're putting roughly in place. We're then going to do the next biggest shape. The next biggest shape is always slightly smaller. So eventually we're just going to get to the details. So we're going to call the details the next biggest shape, which are just small shapes. So if we're talking about the eyes, for example, or the ridges along the antenna, for example, these are all just little shapes that are the next biggest one. We're just going to tackle them one step at a time. So eventually you kind of get to the point where you have fleshed out this whole image that you've got or that you want. And once you've got it roughly what you're happy with, it will be all about as light as this. So notice I've drawn way darker than I normally would here. But this is about as light as it would be. When it's this light, that's when I would start to add in my plan for my hatching and where I would start to ink. For the most part, I'll talk about hatching a bit more as we go along, but for the most part, hatching is, I would define it as just shading with lines. Very simple. And usually parallel lines, but you can cross hatch and move the lines in any direction you want. I think the trick for a trick, again, sorry, I try not to do this. A trick for effective shading is to make sure that the lines follow the shape or body of the surface that you're describing. So if we have a sphere, for example, you can shade, let's say the light source is over here. You can shade like this, and you can shade and hatch like that. So these would just be shading with lines. What I tend to offer for people is the opportunity to kind of follow the form and put the lines in the same place, but oh sorry, I should there we go. Put the lines in the same place, but we just follow the perceived form of the object.
Just that little curve makes a really big difference in the vitality of those two circles.
Yes, and the communication is the same. We understand that these are both spheres, right? We understand that what we're looking at is a light source going on a ball of some sort. But there's, like you said, the vitality, I don't like using the word realism. I like using the word kind of believability
Mm.
of the thing. We can believe it, right? Because we look at like a Disney Pixar film and I see Mike Wazowski in Monsters Inc. or whatever, and he's not real, but he looks believable. I believe him. And I think that's because the understanding of light and shadows and this contrast of light and dark works really well on his form and his shape. It looks like it's set in space. And I think if we follow these curves or these arrangements of form, let's say we've got a 3D shape like this, and we try and match it as best as possible, we can usually create something that is understandable and believable. So we can, let's say it's just like, let's just say this is a really poorly shaped piece of bread loaf or something like this. I don't know what comes to mind. Maybe because I'm super hungry and I want bread, but it's
Lee, just
following,
as
yeah.
I look at your lines right now, I love the way you're varying the thickness and sometimes even just picking up and just indicating light so quickly and easily, just by lifting and breaking that line, making it thick and thin in places. It's beautiful.
Thank you. You know what? That was actually a tip that my one of my university tutors gave me, and he had a bunch of. I was a typical ignorant student who couldn't appreciate anything at the time that anyone older than me was telling me. But luckily, this stuck. And he said, he came over and he said, look, you draw really nicely, but he goes, but your line work is terrible. It's like, what do you mean? I hadn't even thought about the idea of having like even thinking about the line work. I thought, well, I
Mm,
just want you to see the overall image. And and he said, look, let's look at Mark's work. I had another university tutor who was a comic book artist, and he brought over some of his penciling. Because at the time he would do his own penciling, inking, and coloring as part of his work. And he said, look, like the lines that this guy is making are
mm,
interesting. He goes, and just do he goes, just do anything you want. He goes, you could just do like a, I don't know, like a break in the line, and it's interesting. It's more interesting than a straight line.
mm.
And and as soon as he said it, I again
Stuck.
I was a bit yeah, just that quick. I was just a bit ignorant to kind of thinking about anything in a way that anyone was trying to introduce. So I just said, all right, cool, I'll just do that. So from like the last maybe 20 years
Yeah,
or 15 years or so, all I've done is just kind of just lifted and had a
very
break in the
naturally.
line.
Yeah, but it
Yeah.
comes out so naturally. Sorry to interrupt you. I just wanted to
No, no,
contribute
it's
to that.
cool. Thank you. And yeah, and it's in terms of the line weight, I mean, you get that. We're going to get that more with pencils and things like brush pens. So this is a pretty nice one is the line weight, and the tip for that naturally is just to if you press a little bit lighter, you're going to get a thin line. If you press heavier, you're going to get a heavier line. And you can adjust that as you go along. You can make it thicker and lighter, and it doesn't like kind of like it's nice.
Yeah.
Um, I always find charcoal is a really good medium for that, of getting that. I don't have a finger. Oh, I have. Oh, good. I have one on me actually. One sec. Yeah, charcoal I find is a really good medium for that, of learning the kind of delicacy, especially if you can hold it at the end,
Mm.
because you have to put the weight with your thumb and you have to try not to snap it. So if you can adjust your pressure to be really heavy at some points and light at other points while changing directions without breaking this thing, you
Yeah.
get this really nice, nuanced feeling of when to change pressure. And it becomes this almost intuitive, feeling-based approach rather than a cognitive one.
I like.
And I find that that could be really helpful because I mean I teach this to students all the time. Hold a nice thin charcoal stick like this, and the second they try and press heavy, it just breaks, and you think, oh well, all right, cool. Like you get this kind of I don't want it to break, and it feels a little bit jarring. So, but yeah, that's the approach I would say.
There's a question about the
But
particular pencil that you are using there, and one of the interesting things about your pencil is how you've shaved it into a very long point.
yeah, you know what? Again, I think I just I think I was so um enamored by some of my superiors, I guess, is that like or influences of like teaching when I was younger, that I would just do anything that they said. And one of the guys that I was getting taught from, this guy was named Mike. He was my college art tutor actually, rather than my uni. And Mike, he was like kind of like a mixture of Dumbledore and Yoda, but with drawing. And he was there's no other way to describe him other than just he was romantic about drawing and art. It was just he had like the best approach I've ever seen to anyone. Anyway, basically what he would do, he would sit there for at the beginning of each class and he would just kind of shave his pencils into these really long things. And not only did he kind of say it just because it's like a habit of how he grew up, because he was quite older than me at the time, but he just said that he just kind of liked the look of it. And I agreed. I just think it just kind of looks it's more enticing to draw with this than I think maybe I don't know if I have any normal ones actually. For me anyway, yeah, I don't have any at hand, but or maybe I have it in here. I put one away. Uh, I don't think so. No, I don't. Yeah, it's just more enticing to me to draw with something that looks like this than a normal kind of sharpened pencil. And I
Yeah, and
think
then I guess you can do a wider line if you're using the pencil on its edge.
true, yeah. I think yeah, you can get that kind of like nice shading or kind of pressure if you're going to choose it this way, you know, like you can go really light, really wide,
Mm.
get that kind of like effect. It's quite nice. I don't know if I use that as much, but it's more of a it's me being a bit cheap and aesthetic, I guess. I just like the look of it, if I'm honest. But in terms of specific pencil, me and Beth were actually talking about this beforehand. I don't really have a specific pencil preferences for drawing. This is a Faber-Castell. I say Faber-Castell, and I
I
remember I
say
was
Faber-Castell, but who knows?
Faber-Castell. What you know? What I was going to say? I was dating a German girl when I was younger,
Yeah.
I said Faber-Castell to her, and she just laughed in my face.
What did
And
she say?
she just same as you. She said, "Oh, and it's Faber-Castell," and I was like,
Okay.
"Well, it sounds better when you say it, obviously, but you know, all right, whatever." But yeah, Faber-Castell. I normally go between 2B and 4B. So I'll go, yeah. So we've got what, 4B here, another 4B, and then a 3B. This one is chewed up. Um, but yeah, I just go for that. The only reason I like these is because the wood is soft and I can just slice it a little bit easier. But I mean, if you put one of them kind of black and yellow Stapler normal pencils in front of me and it's 2B, I'm just as happy. But yeah, so all right. So should we crack on with the hatching?
Yeah, let's do it.
Yeah. All right. Let me try and find the drawer. Oh, look at that. Okay, so let's zoom in a little bit. How's exactly what my dad used to do, sharpen the pencil with his penknife. So I'm reading the chat as well. Yeah, good. Yeah, I think it's just like it's just I don't know, it's like a nice kind of warm up, you know. Okay, so for if we're talking about utensils, for fine liners, I'll use anything. I am someone who has no allegiance. I will use anything that's put in front of me. I've got this free set from Etcher, I think this is from. Yeah,
Mhm.
Etcher. They gave me this like student, it's just like a student grade quality stuff. I'll use that. I don't mind. And I've got like a bunch in a pot here. And then I've got this huge drawer full of like I can't see, but I've got a huge drawer full of maybe like 50 or so more. And I'll just whatever is the freshest pen, I'll use it, and I'll buy more before they break. And I'm the worst in terms of being economic with them.
Do you have your
But
favorite size when you're doing something like this in an A4 sketchbook?
in terms of thickness, like the
Yeah.
number of it.
Hmm.
Yeah. So I'd probably go for a zero point 0.1. I don't
Okay.
know if you can see that there. Yeah, zero point 0.1 is my preferred. If I'm going for thicker lines, I'll go for zero point 0.2. Um, I used to really like point zero 0.05, and there was a the where is it? Is it here? Is it this one? Yeah. The Pigma Micron Sakura ones, they have a point zero 0.03.
Oh, I've never seen that actually. That's smaller than I've ever seen.
Yeah, it's really, really tiny. And one of my tutors said to me, he goes, you don't ever need a pen that thin. And kind of as a bit of rebellion, I always used a 0.03. And but he's right, you don't need a pen that thin. You just press lighter. I should have just listened. He was right. Um, but yeah, usually a 0.1, but it depends kind of how detailed I'm going with it. So if I got an example of I don't know if I've got an example of something where I would use thicker pens actually. Um Yeah, so something like this, I would use a lot of probably 0.3s
Wow, that's
and zero
spectacular.
fives. Thank you. Just because it's so like I mean, there's so
Individual
many
effect.
variations.
Yeah,
Yeah,
yeah.
so many individual like what I really like is I like as much as possible seeing the individual lines. So there are so many different types of hair clumps and values in there. Values being the lightness or darkness. So there are so many different types around the whole head and the whole shape of him that it's nice to start really thin because you can get start really light and then the thicker the pen we can go heavier and darker and kind of create something
Mm.
and layer it in that way. But for this I think it's quite small. I'll probably just start with a 0.05 I reckon. Wait, are people starting with if people are mostly using 0.1s I'll use the same.
I don't know what people have
You
got.
don't know?
There's a question about fountain pens, whether you could use different nibs in the same way as you were switching between the sizes.
You know what? I haven't used fountain pens. There is a guy who does perspective drawings. I'm not going to remember the name now. It's a British guy. I'll send it to you after so you can
Okay,
send to
I'll
everyone
include
who's
it.
been in here. And
Hmm.
yeah, and but there's a guy who uses fountain pens to do perspective drawings, and he uses them, and they're so cool, man. I don't know why I've just never bothered to use
Yeah,
them. I normally use like I think there's a Fudoki. I don't know. This kind of brush pen. This is my
yeah.
favorite. I normally use that
That's to
to
fill
to
in the
do in the big
thicker,
area.
the darker areas. Is that when you use it?
Yeah, I just think it's like a bit of a waste of time sometimes to do. I mean, I've done it before, like you see with the gorilla or the wasp, but I just think it's a bit of a waste of time to if you've got a dark area. Texture-wise, it can look kind of nice to do things like this, but I think for the
Mm.
most part, it's probably best just to block it in. I think it just that contrast is really nice, you know? Um, but yeah, okay, cool. So let's get started. Let me
Okay,
actually do some drawing.
Louise is
I'm
using a
gonna move my
point one.
point one, yeah? All right, cool. I'll use a point one as well. We'll use the same. All right. I don't want to cheat. All right, here we go. All right, so I'm gonna zoom into my image. Yeah, cool. All right, that'll do. Right, so I always suggest just starting anywhere. I think the nice thing to do is to start normally with the head and eyes and get them sorted, kind of whatever animal we're or person we're drawing. Because I've been filming a lot of my stuff, I found that I tend to draw the eyes last now because that's the shot that everyone's waiting for. So I'm
But
not
do
used to
you
drawing
feel
eyes first.
I have had this debate in my head because I interviewed a girl called Liz Clayton Fuller, and she's a bird drawer, and
Hmm.
she always does the eye
Oh,
last, and I am terrified that if I did something I was really happy with and then you messed the eye, the eye is everything. It holds it all together. Do you ever get anxiety about leaving that spectacular shot to the last minute?
nah, not usually. I think if I can talk kind of confidently about what I do now. I think I'm so, especially with drawing, I'm so comfortable
Mm.
um moving a pen around a page and drawing now that it's just I think by the time if I've done everything else right, by the time I get to the eye, I just think that, oh man, like there's no way I can mess this up now, you know?
Yeah,
Like
well, that's
it's
good.
this thing of yeah, it's like a thing of yeah, like I'm sure it's gonna go fine. And if I mess it up, it's just a case of all right, cool. Like, what do I do now? Like, I have to figure out something of how to make it work. And I guess there's a little bit more pressure when you're doing something as particular um as an ink drawing like this. But I think when it comes to, I think through painting, I've learned that you can probably fix things
Mm.
if you mess up. But also, if you can't fix it, then you just do another one.
Yeah, you put it down
You
to
know?
good practice, I guess.
Yeah, I think just practice a lot. Don't stress about it. It's just ink on a page.
Friends, I interviewed Lee for the podcast and we were talking about confidence in drawing. And then I brought up a video that Lee had done um, drawing penguins in.
Oh
Uh,
my God.
was that the London Zoo, Lee?
Yeah, it's London Zoo. Oh
And
no.
Lee said, "Oh, well, I thought I was good at drawing until I drew penguins flying past."
Oh man, that was yeah. I don't know if anyone. Yeah, I mean that's a really good reference for me to talk about confidence in jewelry. Look, I like that day was so frustrating because I had this idea of if anyone's familiar with my social media or not, I'll just explain quickly. Basically, I like making short films about my work and but mostly about the subject of the work, and then I'll show a process of me drawing, and then I'll kind of articulate or narrate a story about the animal or the subject or facts about it. And I kind of really for like the last year, I've had this idea of doing a TV show
Mm.
where it's like a nature documentary, but we look at our relationships with animals. Um, and we explored that through art. Like that's the idea. And I thought, okay, cool, but I don't know how to navigate that in a professional manner, in a presentation manner. Like I'm not a presenter of TV or whatever. And then the RA, so the Royal Academy of Arts, hit me up to teach a workshop. And then in the meantime, they said, well, we want to do a film with you as well. And so I haven't even looked at the reference image. I don't even know if I'm doing this right. But they um they said, "Oh, we want to do a film with you as well. We want to go to the London Zoo." And they pitched pretty much my TV show idea to me. And I thought, well, yeah, obviously I want to do that. That's amazing. And I thought, all right, cool, I'll do that. But what I don't need to worry about is the drawing. Like I know I'm gonna do that well. I just need to think about everything else. And I was so focused on everything else. And I will do this. I will blame the cold. It was incredibly cold on that day. It was freezing and I was wearing fingerless gloves and I was shaking trying to draw something in pencil. And I couldn't do it. And the penguins, we went inside the enclosure and they every time we went in, they ran away. So the guys were like, all right, cool, we'll just draw them while they're swimming. And I was like, well, I don't know if you've drawn a penguin swimming at 30 miles an hour, but it's
Yeah.
tough, man. I was like, all right, cool, I'll give it a go. And after like 20 minutes, one of the producers comes over and he just goes, can you draw anything better? And I was like, well, all right, well, I'm trying, man. Like, and I was just, it was hilarious, man. I just felt like such a div,
Oh dear.
just trying
The
to
video turned out so well.
thank you. But if anyone watches it, just please know I can draw better penguins. I promise. I was just really bad that day. Have I messed this up already? Have I done that already? All right. I think that's all right. So, all right. Right now, all I'm doing is just doing the outline and just kind of um taking my time to draw in any way that I want. So, like I said earlier, this kind of thing is really therapeutic for me, and I don't know if you all feel the same, but I kind of treat this like a little form of therapy and just kind of playing now. So, before I get into the actual shading of part of the subject, which I'll do because we won't have enough time to be able to do the whole image today. So I'll make sure I do some shading of maybe the head or the back here. I think the back would be quite nice actually, won't it? It's got a lot of like really dark and light areas, so we can play with this. Um, but before I get into it, I like defining the shapes. So I'm just doing that now, and I'm just kind of playing through, knowing that if I make a mistake or I describe it wrong, it's fine. Especially, I just think that kind of on today's theme is that we're storytellers, you know? So like the idea is that we're all going to be drawing the same thing right now, and it's just going to look different from all of us, you know? Like we don't need to try and make it I say look good, but we don't need to try and make it look a certain way because however you approach making it is just the kind of the interesting part about it, I think. Um, and even with the same instructions, and like I have this kind of with dance as well. I train with my friends still quite a lot, even though I don't compete anymore or perform. And we all train in the same place. We all do the same drills or exercises, and we all dance completely differently. Just because we all have the like, even when we're doing the same movement, it shows differently based on physiology, approach, you know, like understanding. And I think the same thing happens with drawing, or like when it's good, or like a good thing is, sorry, for the same thing to happen with drawing. Um, I'm gonna just describe the top of this wing, the top of these wings quickly. I want to just don't want to leave a blank section. My reference image is a little far away, so forgive me if I'm doing this a bit wrong. But
Lee, Kiki's noticing how you're skipping a little bit each, and again, I guess it's about varying the line quality.
Mm. Oh, in terms of breaking up
Like
the line,
leave,
you
yeah,
mean?
breaking the line.
Yeah, at this point, I think it's just habit. I think I would say like I think if I was to try and formalize it, you can definitely overdo it. So too much of this breaking up stuff would just make the piece look a little bit weird. Like it's like if you try and add a little bit of curve to your line work or to the shape of the body. Straight lines normally actually work kind of just as well. If I was
Mm,
to kind of straighten up some of these lines, they work kind of just as well as curved lines. We can kind of sharpen it up like this a little bit. But what I kind of think is that, like working from light to dark, it's probably best to make the whole thing as light as possible and then darken the areas that you want to darken.
mm,
And with the making the lines interesting, breaking them up like these parts, is that if I do that loads, I can then kind of go back in at the end and edit it and say, oh, actually, you know what, I need to kind of fix this part and this part because that needs to be solid here. And then I can have the line break down this part,
mm,
but I can't then go back and remove the ink
mhm,
afterwards
mhm.
whilst I'm keeping the purity of the ink from the fine liner. So I tend, yeah, to to just kind of overdo it in the beginning and knowing that I can go back and edit it later on. Um, Also, is there I can lighten the screen if it's too dark for people as well. Let me know if you want me to
I think
lighten
it
it a
looks
little bit.
great, but
Yeah?
you can let me know in the comments if you want Lee to change anything. There's a question about your dance. Do you want to describe your street dance a little bit?
It's it's incredible. No, joke. It's no, it's basically my so my my street dance is yeah, so I basically I left I went to uni 2009 to 11, no, 9 to 12. Yeah, I was a terrible student and I in my third year to get my BA I dropped out because I was doing a TV show over here called Got to Dance on Sky One. And I actually Adam Australian guy was the host. Adam, who was from Coyote Ugly. What's his name?
I don't know.
Adam.
I'm a
Is it Adam
terrible.
Garcia? I want to say Adam Garcia, but I don't know if that's right.
I don't know.
Is it Adam Garcia? Anyway, basically, I did a show over here, got to dance, got to the live semi-finals, and it was an interesting experience, but it led to basically me getting picked up by a dance agency. Because I was just performing on my own on there, doing street dance solo. And I had the opportunity to at the basically the end of my university year just to go traveling around Europe to do some dance shows. I did that, and then I basically just kind of committed to that. I'd already kind of at that point been competing a lot. We have quite a competitive dance circuit. We call it the battle scene in street dance, and it's pretty much just people competing either in one-on-ones, two or twos, or group battles, as it were, where one person will go to a music they haven't heard, then they try and dance their best, kind of like we saw in the Olympics with breaking. Pretty much exactly that layout. And I really, really love that aspect of it. And I think a lot of the street dance that you see in music videos, films, adverts, a lot of that is birthed in terms of the movements and ideas from the battle scene. So the best people that are out right now in terms of dancing, street dance, are people that spend most of their time competing for no money. It's all a status thing. It's all a thing about appreciating the craft and being appreciated by your peers. It's a
Mm.
really, really pure way of exploring the style. And I've always loved that. But I kind of like fell into more theatre work as well, and then kind of started to understand the artistic manner or side of it a bit more. And then I started judging quite a lot. And I kind of fell in love with the idea of thinking about art and movement and kind of any kind of art form in a more formalized way to be able to judge it. And so I've gone through this kind of stage of dancing, then kind of performing in different places around the world, some like really cool names and places that I've gone to, and then judging loads of events, which is really cool. And now it's just kind of finding a way to mix my experiences of dance culture, battle culture, and movement within art as well. And
When
kind
we
of the
say
obvious one
goodbye,
was,
when we say goodbye, we can have a look at that painting that's behind you, right?
mm,
When we say goodbye, we can have a look at that painting that's behind you, right?
mm,
When we say goodbye, we can have a look at that painting that's behind you, right?
Yeah, absolutely. There's another one on the wall next to it, so I'll show you that too.
Yeah, great.
Um, but yeah, it's like that aspect of sorry, the kind of the interest then came from mixing those two
Mm.
passions, and it kind of obviously went into the way of showing dancers moving and kind of putting that with paints. But now I'm kind of thinking about it in more of a ooh, what's the word? A evolutionarily historical manner with
Mm.
our relationships with animals. So I'm trying to think about it in terms of movement and how animals move and how we move that's similar to animals and how we think and communicate that's similar to animals. And a lot of the conflict that we had in dance battles was easy to navigate because I knew that at the end of the thing I was going to hug the person or shake their hand and it's fine. It's like any kind of competition or match, you'll give a bit of fight and needle or whatever, and then when it's over, it's over. And I quite like the idea of exploring that within animals right now as well, of the conflict um, between same species, of how they'll do things. Even how like there might be I don't know a pride of lions, and the, there'll be some brothers before they break out to go to find their new pride. They'll have a bit of wrestling with each other. That kind of
Mm.
interaction, that familiarity that we can connect with as well, I think is quite interesting.
That is
Um,
interesting.
okay, so should we go with some details on this section?
Yeah, let's do it.
Should we do that? Do I need to get a bit closer to it to show the
Oh,
lines, or what do you
I
reckon?
think it looks great.
Yeah. All
Yep.
right, let's do that then. All right, so I'm going to try and zoom in actually on my reference. Hold on. I'm going to just control here. Control zoom in so I can see what I'm looking at, and I'm back. So the way that I would describe this, I don't know if you can see, but I've already done some pencil marks as well here to kind
Mm.
of guide me of where I want to draw. And these pencil marks are really helpful because it helps me not have to think about where I want to put the lines as I'm putting them down. I kind of want to have that already figured out to a large extent before I start inking. So I will, if I'm inking, usually I don't need to kind of worry about that too much anymore because I think when you do it on lots of different types of animals or different types of subjects, you realize that even though this is a wasp and I'll draw an elephant or a giraffe, that a cylinder is still a cylinder, and a sphere is a sphere, and a cube is a cube, and a prism is a prism, and they'll just be slightly different on different animals or on different subjects. But for the most part, things pretty much curve in the same way and move. So if I'm describing this kind of bulbousy shape here, the two kind of bulbous bits on the back of the wasp with the pencils first, I know that when I go in ink, that's pretty much what I have to describe. And I'm sure you can all see in there as well that even though this whole area is black, it's actually a lot darker in, say, like these corners here.
Mm.
And then you've got this kind of dip here, and then like another kind of area here of darkness, and then a kind of a darkness here. So what that means is, oh yeah, sorry, and a bit at the top here as well, right? So we've got these areas that are, even though this is all black compared to the rest, this is areas of, these are the areas of light black, and these are the areas of kind of darker black. So we can kind of now know that this whole thing needs to be lighter than the yellow around it, but this still needs to be lighter than this. So I would approach to do this in two ways. Either I would, maybe three ways, but I would just go through the different ways I would approach it. Start really light here. So I would describe this whole shape, and I would use my ink pen because again, this area needs to be darker than this. So we need to have a separation between these two. I can't just do this in one, leave this, and then have that there as well. There's no separation. Um, so I need to have that area that's darker. So I would start really light here, and I would just fill it out like this. Then I would get a thicker pen. So let's say I do a 0.05 here, and then I could do a point 0.1 or a 0.2 in these areas. and just have a separation of thick lines. So let's say we do uh, like, let's say I do that rough shape, for example, like that's on the back. Uh, that, yeah, that'll do. Okay. So let's say it's like this. And then we've got the corners as well. So I might do a, where is it? 0.5? Yeah, 0.05 here. And then I might start describing that body or that back, just these really thin, continuous, continuous lines. Probably won't think too much about it. I quite like the idea of doing something that feels nice as much as it looks nice. And these breaks in the line, they can even be, so there's a particularly light area here. So we could even kind of break and come back in to kind of skip that area to show that there's a lighter area here in the back as well. Then we notice that it starts to kind of change and kind of go this way at some point. And if you need to, you can do one side, do the other, and then slowly meet yourself in the middle rather than kind of going and going, oh, I curved the lines a little bit too late and now I'm going to rush it. And it kind of muddies up the shape a little bit. Um, then if I want to do the darker areas a bit thick like this, I can do like a 1, press a bit harder, still following that same curvature, or I can do a 2, press that a little bit darker, and I can get that separation. And notice that I'm going over the pencil line. That's just a guide of roughly where that dark and light area ends, but it's kind of hard, obviously, to define exactly where that ends. So you can just use that as a rough guide. So that's kind of one way that I could approach it. Let's say like
Do
that's
you
like,
erase your pencil lines afterwards, Lee?
yes, actually, I have. Oh, I'll show you how. This is cool. So this is my friend. Oh God, sorry, I realize as I'm talking, I realize the mic's still on the table. So my friend, he was learning to draw, and he is a guy that he will do an immense amount of research on something before he starts anything. And I didn't even know you could get these until he bought it, which was hilarious. But it's this Derwent, the electric erasers.
Uh-huh, I've
So
seen that.
yes, with these, so you press a little button on the side and it spins it rapidly. The reason I like this for fine liners is because if you use a, I don't know if it's going to happen now, but if you use an eraser, sometimes you can smudge, but sometimes you can actually remove the ink a little bit
Mm,
and the lines go a bit paler. So what I tend to do is it's less abrasive if I just use this. And then to avoid smudging, I get a little brush. You can do makeup brush, paintbrush, whatever, and just
that's a great idea.
get rid of that. And it's just it's such a good way of even for pencil, charcoal, whatever. I always appreciate using electric and then a brush to get it rather than my hands. I get a bit clumsy otherwise. Um, but yeah, so that would be the first way. And then the second way is that you can just do the whole area, knowing that you can layer it when it's dark. Sorry, these are terrible lines. You can do the whole area, top to bottom. I'll do better lines in a bit, I promise. But if I do this relatively quickly, and then what I can do is just take like a thicker pen and then go over it. It's a bit rougher and messier, but I think the kind of the upside to this is that it makes the whole sentence of the drawing a bit more coherent this side than it does this side, even though it's a bit messier in the covered up areas. I think there's a bit more unity here than there is here, I think.
I
That
wonder,
might be because I've broken up the lines more, but yeah, sorry.
I'm thinking if you would choose a different technique depending on your subject, like if you had something super delicate and fragile versus something like the chimpanzee or the gorilla that's kind of solid, whether you would choose to use one, like either one of those, depending on your choice of subject.
Yeah, it's a good question. I think I'll be honest. I think it's about trying to think about the image overall. So trying to think about it holistically. So if I was to say this, yeah, I'll say it first and then I'll do the kind of the analogy of language. I think trying to understand what it is that you're trying to do this for first, I think really helps. So right now I'm trying to do a demonstration for you guys and enjoy the drawing. So I want to do something that I like doing, but also draw in a way that is clear and coherent and I don't miss out anything or make anything kind of inaccessible in terms of the way that I like to approach it. So I'm going to draw in a particular way that allows for that. So I might be drawing in slightly thicker, heavier lines. I might be drawing slightly quicker than I would normally, making decisions that I wouldn't normally make, like roughing up certain shapes here, for example, just to show that you can use straight lines. But if I'm going for something more delicate and representative of the subject, I might do something like this, where I take loads of care and time with even the let's see if I can get the focus on that. Or with even so even on the nose, for example, I mean the lines are really fine here, where I'd use like a 003 and I would take so much time in kind of spacing out just because the story that I wanted to tell about this was about the sclera, about ape's eyes. And I wanted the whole image to feel really soft,
Mm.
even though it's this powerful animal. So I took the approach of like you said, Bethan, of really trying to adjust technically to create really soft lines that describe this in a way that would communicate that. Naturally, what comes with that as well is choosing the right reference photo. I needed the gorilla to look like it was pondering something, that it looked like it was approachable, and so that was part of it as well. And that's again kind of what I mean in terms of thinking about it holistically. So for this, what I've said about kind of why I'm approaching it, drawing it helps, but also the reference photo, like I said earlier, really helps for that. It's such a brilliantly high definition picture of a wasp that shows you almost its entire anatomy from kind of top down, that you can really get into the weeds of it and play with it any way you like, you know? But yeah, so if I apply some of these now, but in terms of yeah, the approach that I don't even know where that was. Yeah, in terms of this, I think I'm more inclined to do this side right now. The kind of broken up, um, light approach for a light area, dark approach for a dark area, and then if necessary, I can just come in and block something out if I want with like a brush pen. No, I can always do that and then add some more contrast and get a bit more interesting like that. And then that gives me when you see an area like this, that gives you so much more room to, if you want, to go in and edit the lines. It's a bit trickier to go in and then go over your lines and make them a little bit darker. Kind of build up like that. But you've got more room that way. I think I'm going to do that now, and I'm going to try the point zero. No, I did say I'd do point one, didn't I? All right, don't cheat. All right, so point one. I will do the light area first. So we can notice the more we look at it, the more we see. And there's going to be, it's really kind of dark on the outer skirts of this. So I'm going to try and identify where the first light part is. And I'm going to press slightly lighter, trying to press slightly lighter than I did with the defining of the shape here. Also, Bethan, please tell me if I'm running over at any point. I will just talk until.
We've got about 3 minutes until we've come up to the hour, but
Oh, no way.
um, I don't want to stop you.
Well, I don't have anything to, I've got a meeting at 2, so I'm good until then. So
Friends, it's
if you
going to
guys
go over a little bit longer, but we don't want to interrupt you, Lee. But maybe while you're talking, you could answer the question that's in the chat, which is, how long did it take you to complete the gorilla drawing?
oh my God, how long? I have no idea. Well, that's a lie. I have an idea. I don't actually know. I think I tend to draw quite slowly because keep in mind I film, so in terms of like an overall time span, probably 3 days. Because I film obviously a lot of my stuff, so it's like and you'll see I have a lot of different angles. So I'll set the hold on, show you what I've got and what I'm working with at the moment. Um, So I'll set the tripod up. We'll do like an angle like this, and then I'll film it for 30 seconds, and then I'll move the tripod, and then I'll go again and I'll draw it. And it's just a lot of this kind of shifting it around and doing that all the time. So that takes that uh, it means it takes way longer to draw than I would like, but I still tend to draw quite slowly. So I would say in terms of hours, I'd say probably like maybe between 6 and 10 hours, I would say, of actual drawing time. But I think that varies, and it varies depending on kind of the approach as well, the style. Like it's uh, I'll keep quoting my tutors as well. And one of them said to me, work always fits the time given. So you can kind of, I think, in terms of a piece of work that you're given to do with a deadline, he said that you're likely to produce the same piece of work if you had uh 2 weeks to 2 months, just because you'll procrastinate, you'll think about it, and you'll think that you've got loads of time or whatever. And I think I try to take control of that a little bit now and think, all right, what approach is it that I'm going to use for this one? Like I was saying with the Gorilla, it being soft, and I think, okay, cool. Well, I need it to be soft, so I need to give myself more time to do that. But if I want it to be more illustrative, um, and I hate using this word, but cartoony, then it just won't take anywhere near as long because I just need to be more definite and confident with each line that I'm putting down. Um, and I think that once you get into a little flow, it becomes a lot easier to kind of float through. All right, cool. So we've done that. So roughly articulated the top of the back here. I'm going to see what happens here if I use a point two. Let's see. Yeah, point two. Yeah, there. Cool. Point two. I'm going to see what happens if I do that in the dark areas and see if this works. I'm going to press pretty heavy. I go a lot when I'm not rough sketching, I'll go a lot closer to the tip, and I know that I'm pressing too heavy when my knuckles start or my nails start to turn white like this. I know I need to relax, but I'll press a lot heavier here, and I'll try and get the contrast between those lighter areas of the black and the darker areas. And I try this first usually before I put in kind of blocks of ink. One, because if you put in a block of ink straight away, it's quite a scary um, thing to do and think, oh man, how am I going to work with that? And how am I going to undo that or make sure that it fits in with the image? Um, and if you're feeling like me, like I do sometimes, which is not confident about the approach, it can be easier to do this. And then if you feel like the contrast between the light and dark areas isn't enough, we can always block it in. So this would be, for example, how I might start the dark areas on this. And if I show you the wasp here, this one. So similar thing. So I've just gone really, really light, really thin, and then layered it and slightly darker in these areas. And then we've gone kind of got a similar approach. Try to put this one on top because it's smaller. There we go. Kind of like that. You can all see this. Uh, yeah. So it's kind of similar approach. I mean, I don't know what I was thinking here. It looks like completely different, but you get the idea. Is that I've used the different weights of the lines to describe that and not left the yellow part blank because there's still like this nice speckling of black in there, but made sure that there is a distinction between the inside of this and the yellow light part on the hide of it as well. So what I could do though, if we want, is then take a little brush pen. Like I said, I prefer this one because I use this all the time. This is Pentel. It's Pentel's one. But could use this to block some in and see how that works now. But I've also just bought this one and I need to kind of justify buying it and spending my money. So I'm gonna try and use this a little bit now as well. Um, but basically just identifying where the dark areas are. And I'm going to show a little trick of how to kind of blend um, the block of blacks in with the line work as well that I've been using for my images when I block it in. Because the only kind of thing that I don't like about using a big brush pen um, when I'm drawing is that it just looks really clunky if I just do these big, bold shapes with harsh outlines. Just feels really weird. So what I like to do a bit of that here, and maybe a bit up here as well. That's quite nice. Yeah. What I like to do is then go back and edit with a nice thick fine liner, so like a two, and then I'll just kind of just pull out from it and just maybe extend or change the shapes or draw some lines that come out, and it just looks less clunky and more in touch with what's happening. And where possible, I would say just try and go over the lines that you've already done, so we can still see the distinction between the lines that you're putting down and the paper underneath. Because I think just like when you're painting, it's nice to see brush strokes, of different types of shapes. And I think when you're hatching, it's nice to see the lines that you're putting down as well. Um, just because the lines are interesting. Kind of like when you're speaking and it's how you pronounce a word, a certain word. It's nice to hear how someone else says things. Like my brother, he's both raised in Watford, which is kind of northwest London here. But for some reason, he just says the word there, like and it's I just find it's always interesting. He's an actor now as well, and the kind of the casting agency he's with and his dialect coaches have picked up on it as well. Um,
Is
but it's
that
just I
unique
feel
to
like
him, or is that something that's said in a different region?
well, I don't know because his mum. So he grew up with his mum, who's Iranian,
Okay.
and she it's so weird. We literally talked about this the other day. She's got a really she's still got a thick Iranian accent, but she doesn't say the word there like the. But she does her variations of speech go in really interesting ways. So I don't know. He has no clue either, but it does make for I don't know, it's like whenever I hear him say it, I think, oh cool, I'm listening to my little brother
Yeah,
right now,
yeah,
like
yeah. That's a great tip
but
that you've just shown about blending those big blocks of dark marks into the light. That it looks like a beautiful transition now.
thank you. Yeah, I think it's just I don't think it always needs to happen. Like well, I'll leave this bit at the top there. I think
Mm,
that's quite nice as well because it creates this nice
like a
the,
shadowing
the
effect.
the yeah, this nice shape. And I think that we get this in comic books quite a lot, where you'll have like a like a description of like a turn or an angle like that, and it's this quite nice angle shape. But maybe even looks like an eyebrow. If they're going to do it in comic books, it looks kind of like um this thing that you have that this nice thing that doesn't need to blend into everything. Like this very angular, harsh contrast of things. And I think there's still space for that in the image. I just think that we can mix a blend of techniques where some of them can be more um, coherent and connecting with each other, and some can be a bit more kind of stand out. And those subtleties, I think, across an entire image build for something really interesting,
Mm,
I
mm,
think.
mm.
Yeah.
Lee, I wonder if you could talk a little about storytelling because your work to me is just so tied in with the stories of animals and human animal relationships, and I'm really interested to hear you express to uh, the audience this whole idea of storytelling in your work because it's art, but the story is really where it's at.
Thank you. I mean, yeah, like so the all right, so I guess my kind of reason for storytelling and focusing on it so much is because every piece of artwork that I've been introduced to, that I've enjoyed, prioritizes inclusivity. And I, I've kind of found with image making, it's this really, really traditional, really, really historically relevant way of communicating with people and making art and kind of expressing ourselves. But there are so many places that I enjoy because I enjoy works of art that I go. Like the National Portrait Gallery here in London for me is like one of my favorite galleries that I've visited around the world. I lived in central London for a few years, and for about 2 of those years, most weekends I would just spend an hour or two there. And I loved it. But what I kind of realized was that no one wanted to come with me who liked art as well. And I realized it was because for them, it's just pictures on a wall in a room. And even when I've done a couple of exhibitions now, and I did a dual or duo exhibition. I don't know how you'd frame it. Here in London with someone, and we loved it. We had so many people come down, and we had some really notable British artists come down. It was really nice. But all my friends that came down pretty much just came down to support me, not because the event was interesting. And even though the artists in the room liked it, my friends, they probably wouldn't go back on their own, you know? And I thought, okay, cool. Like if I'm going to engage people with my work, I want to do it in a way that really considers how they like to consume it.
Mm.
But I don't want to compromise on the fact that I like making work in the way that I like making it. And kind of through a few years of figuring out how that would work, that became making films and short snippets and films of the process of storytelling. And I think the actual kicker was a really nice accident that came across. Basically, I was doing Inktober
Hmm.
for a couple of years. And I don't know if you all feel the same. For me, Inktober was always a nightmare because I just couldn't complete it. There would always be, I'd get to day 11 or so and I'd get so stressed and I think, oh, but everyone online is going to be disappointed in me if I don't post up my one picture for a, and then you feel bad and whatever. And then one year I did my best to complete it, and I did. And what I was doing was I said, okay, cool, I'll record myself drawing it all, but I'll talk about what I'm trying to learn from it and why I'm trying to commit to this. And I did that. And it got a really good reception online. And then I did it again the next year and I thought, oh, that'd be fun to do. But I was like, but all I thought was I can't just talk about what I'm learning again. I've already kind of done that. And I'd already planned out if sorry, this is me jumping ahead. I'm assuming everyone's familiar with Inktober, but Inktober is just it's a global art community thing that's done every October for 31 days. And there is an official prompt list where you're given a prompt or a theme each day, and you have to just respond to that theme by drawing a piece of work that responds to it. So it might be spooky or trouble or panda or something like this, and you have to draw a piece of work that responds to that prompt. Um, what I like to do because I like drawing animals is I'll draw for every theme. I had planned out a different animal that could respond to that theme. So scary, I drew shark, for example, or winding, I drew a snake, that kind of stuff. And again, I thought, okay, cool. Well, I can't just talk about my process, or I'll just talk about the animals, and I'll just have that as a narration over the top. And I think on the third day, it just kind of blew up online, and I think it got like I think because I was making little videos of it. I think it got like 250,000 views in like a
Wow.
day,
Back to the
and
Fineliners were born on that day.
pretty much, yeah. And I was like, oh, this is brilliant, and I was like, oh, cool. People are resonating with this, and then I think what was really cool was that I don't know what this says about me, but I used to love playing a game where I would say to my friends like. Sorry, you hear sirens. I'm in Southeast London, so this is but there'd be like a game I'd play with my friends where I would say like, "Oh, just tell me an animal and I'll tell you a fact about them," and they'd never want to play it. And then I finally found this audience or the
You
community
found you.
online that, yeah, yeah, that wanted to learn about this stuff. So I thought, okay, cool. I'll just tell you facts about animals. Um, and then that kind of I came kind of in and out of that space online, but ultimately I found that there were certain animals like megafauna, for example, like elephants, blue whales, I don't know, like giraffes, these kind of things, where most of the facts that I could tell you about them weren't particularly interesting because we're all familiar with them. We've all watched David Attenborough nature documentaries and that kind of stuff, or we've all grew up with Steve Irwin, like and learned about these animals through these different spaces. And And I thought, okay, cool. Well, if I'm going to try and make an elephant interesting or a giraffe interesting, maybe I need to kind of talk about, I don't know, an experience that someone's had with it. And I think that started to grow a little bit. And then I did a story about pigeons. I just always thought it was weird that my nan, she used to hate them. and she was the first person that introduced to me the phrase "the rats with wings." And but then she would we'd sit outside, and there would be a collar dove, so basically a rock dove, a pigeon, basically just with white feathers and a little collar around it, like as its markings. And she would say how beautiful it is, and I would just it's the same as a pigeon. It's just pigeons are great, like, and pigeons are cool because they got those iridescent feathers, those like purple and green things.
Isn't that
And
interesting?
and I thought it was always cool, but it was I was like, okay, cool, but I don't really know how to kind of talk to people about pigeons and say they're cool. And then I kind of started reading about them, realized obviously there are a lot of pigeon fanciers still about and that train them around the world. They're appreciated in loads of different cultures and countries. And then I learned all about the stuff in the war that how they were used for messages and kind of there were medals of valor that were given to pigeons. And I just thought it was such an interesting story. I was like, well, I just got to talk about this. And then I did that, and that was kind of the first moment I think I I connected with a piece of work and storytelling. I did this like kind of watercolor gouache painting of it that everyone else connected with. I think on Insta it got like a few million views, and then I sold prints of it. And because I was selling those prints, I was able to buy my computer cameras and all this kind of other stuff or whatever. And I realized, oh, it's actually this. Not only is it a in terms of talking about it in terms of a career, it's more of a it opens up more doors if you can talk about stories. I think about your work and yourself, because it's just what people connect with. But it was just more interesting to me and kind of I guess the natural development, the kind of again that iteration of or iterative approach of I do this thing and then how can I build on that and do the next thing and how can I build on that and do the next thing. And I think now it's rather than singular stories, it's making the work a bit more thematic across kind of multiple episodes or themes. Sorry, exploring a theme across multiple episodes. And that's where the work with London Zoo is now coming in. I'm kind of exploring telling the stories that I'm interested in, like um navigating the kind of the world of zoos and conservationist zoos and what that means for animals and the idea of that there's a pretty huge anti-zoo sentiment I think that is quite pervasive I think amongst most people right nowadays and I think I held some quite strong anti-view sentiments and maybe even like bought into the rhetoric as well. And then my mum's partner started working at a zoo a few years back. And I thought, oh, but he's a really lovely guy. Like, why would he want to go and do something that hurts animals? And I realized, well, obviously he wouldn't. So I started talking to him about it. And then he introduced me to the concept of a conservation zoo. I'd never heard of that before, and he talked to me about the kind of work that they were doing there. And every time that they were able to increase the enclosures, even just a little bit, say for the lions or the tapirs or anything like this, the people who run the park were buzzing at an extra, I don't know, 50 square meters of land. And I thought, oh, that you really care about helping the animals. Like, it's really nice. And then I started talking with more people in wildlife conservation and realized how many different areas there are of people that are all trying to do the same thing, but they're just doing it in different ways. And I think naturally that's kind of led me to this area of wanting to talk about it and explore it. Just one, because it's interesting to me, but two, um, because I think it just makes for a more engaging way to connect with the work that I make. I don't know if that's going to work for everyone, because some people's work is so brilliantly, um, I think brilliantly interesting in just the image alone, whether it's because it's hyper realistic, whether because it has a new technique, whether because the image itself houses the story of or the questions that it's the person, the artist is trying to communicate, whatever the reason. Sometimes it just that's just what works. But for me, I think the way I like to make images, uh I like to play the image in the way that I like, but also I think just really consider the subject and even just the approach of why do I want to draw that subject or why do I want to paint that subject and what's interesting about that to me and do I just want to paint it because it looks good? There's value in that too, but also is there a part of it where I can find a nice aspect where I can connect with it in a way that resonates with other people too? I don't know
Yeah,
if that
I
answered the
really
question,
love
but
it, watching you explore ethics because that's something that, yeah, people generally kind of shy away from. And
yes.
yeah, you tackle it head on, which is really cool.
Thank you. Yeah, it's quite I'll be honest, it's tough because I've got no philosophical background. I don't work in these fields. But I just have had a massive interest in reading about it for the last 10 years or so. So I've even when I talk about it, I get me and you were talking about the comments that you can get online sometimes, and the amount of people I have that that will completely support the message that I've got, that will challenge me in a really healthy way. And then there's like a whole area online of people where they'll just just roast me for saying certain things about ethics. You know, I did a video on consent recently, and there were so many people that were just absolutely roasting me because they were kind of laughing at the idea of using the word consent with animals. Um, but I think it's I don't know, I think it's fun, man. I think it's fun just to talk about things candidly, kind of open up the 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 doors to a big conversation about things that we all care about, we all think about, we're all affected by, we all like
Yeah.
we care about nature, we care about these things, and it's just I don't know, just fun to learn about it, I think. But
There's a question about whether or not you've always been this patient, meaning doing
oh
lines,
no,
very, very detailed line work, or did that come with time?
that was, you know what? Time and accident, I think. So I have been told by many teachers that I should be tested for ADHD. And it makes sense. Now I've got a 5-year-old son, and and I see why. Because he my mom tells me he's exactly how I was, and he's a lot. And I love it, but it is a lot for people, bless him. And my missus, she's getting currently she's getting going through the process of seeing she can get diagnosed with ADHD as well. 'Cause, like she kind of has those same tendencies behaviorally. And all I found was when I was younger, for some reason, I don't know why, drawing was the only thing that could keep me sat still. I just reading, to be fair, reading did that as well, actually. I used to I even when I was in the playground at school, I'd be reading books. A little weirdo, but yeah, drawing for some reason, it would just keep me sat still. It would just, I mean, I could quite literally draw for 10, 12 hours and just and not stress. It was really weird. Um, so yeah, like I think it was more just an intuitive understanding of this thing helps me keep calm, so I'm just going to do it. And then in terms of the patience with learning, like doing things wrong, I think that comes from an understanding or like a reframing, at least for me, of how I feel about doing things wrong and what that means, and am I gonna if I mess this drawing up, like what happens, like yeah, I'll get annoyed for sure, and I might might even throw my sketchbook across the room and storm off or whatever. But it's at the end of the day, it's just ink on a page, like I said earlier, so I can just try again. And I think the fact that you can just try again is kind of what feels really nice about it. But
Mhm.
actually, the same guy that I was telling you earlier about Mike, the Dumbledore Yoda guy, he uh he taught me that lesson in a really harsh way. I had this really nice drawing I'd spent like 2 days on. I said, "Oh, Mike, can you come and tell me what you think?" And he got this thick Sharpie, and I don't think I have one right now. And he just kind of come over, and it was like two days worth of drawing as a teenager. And he goes, "No, that's not good." And he
Oh
crossed that
no.
out, and he just went over it all this. And at the end of it, he just kind of smiled, put the Sharpie back together, left it on the table for me, and walked off. And I was fuming, and I kind of went up to him. I said, "Mike, like why'd you do that? That really wound me up." And
Yeah.
he just said, "Don't worry, you can do it again."
Oh wow.
And I was like, it just completely diffused me. And I went, yeah, you're right,
Yeah.
actually, I can. I
Yeah.
will.
That's a lesson.
Oh, yeah, it's a lesson learned, man. I was gonna say last thing for just for the technique wise. So there's this thing called I think it's painting, it's pointillism in with ink pens. It's called stippling, I think, or I don't know, I can't remember the names, but it's basically just drawing with dots. So this little bit underneath here, rather than using little lines to shade or to define or describe this part, I probably just do some dots. Or some different shapes, maybe some like circles or stuff like this, or maybe just even just kind of random lines. underneath here, and it gives that effect, that dotted effect. And then we can probably, because you notice obviously some of the yellow parts, you've got some of that black peeping through. So rather than doing hatching again to give different textures, you can just make different dots and shapes, and it kind of keeps it alive a little bit, I think. Makes it less flat and a bit more interesting.
So we're
But
coming up
yeah,
for about an hour and a half now, Lee.
we start.
I wonder, what should we do, folks? Should we keep going or should we wrap up? Do you have any final questions for Lee? Some people are dropping off to start their day.
Okay. Yeah, let's should we leave it there then?
Do you want to does anyone have any final questions?
I switch.
Or maybe we can switch to your other camera and you can have a quick chat about your dance art.
Oh yeah. Shall I show you guys that? I've got another one on the other side. Hold on. Oh, what's going on?
That's a great setup. I like that.
Thank you.
Do you know what
Let
I'm
me.
amazed with your work is that you have these detailed, very fine line drawings, and then you've got such variation in what you're creating.
I didn't even see that one.
I
Yeah,
can see, we
I
can see
just
that.
you can see it.
Yep.
Yeah, I think it's just like just wide tastes. Sorry, I'll go back to the mic. Yeah, I'll go back over here. Yeah, it's just yeah. There's someone else said that. I got a studio visit from another artist, and she's a really fine artist, and she makes these really incredible pieces of clouds. It's amazing. And the artist that she kind of is in the circles with, everyone makes one thing and they just repeat that thing over and over. And I think for when you're learning to do something, I think it's really important to do that thing as many times as you can, like over and over. Um, in terms of professionally and building your own career, I think it's important too. And she came to my studio and she goes, "Oh, are you sharing with someone?" I was like, "No." And she goes, "Oh, you do a lot of different work." And I thought I was like, "Oh yeah, cool." Like, I get, and it was like it wasn't like an insult, but it was more like a, "Oh, you should kind of like knuckle down and focus on one thing." And and it's like I agree and disagree. I completely agree in terms of building a reputation, in terms of um building a skill set, and then building a career out of it. I completely agree. I think it's important to do kind of one type of work, but I think in terms of what you're interested in, it doesn't make sense to me just with how I operate my life and how I work. It doesn't make sense to me to only do one thing in art. I feel like the point of art or a point of art is to, one, communicate with other people and and build bridges on different topics. But two, it's just to play. Like I feel like the art is really about playing. It's like the this chimp behind me. This was just like I was painting my studio, and there was a I had a I there was a nailed in a whiteboard. So I took the whiteboard off. I wanted to move it over the other side. It's over there now, and I forgot that the wall was red behind it. So I just had this red square. So I was like, all right, cool. I'll just paint a chimp on it. And it's just the idea of just fun to me to just use the skills to play in different ways and explore. But I quite like the idea of thinking about it like this, that the artist is all in here, and everything in terms of like ink drawings, paintings, oils, film, whatever, they're just different mediums for you to make the thing that you want. And I think that regardless of the um regardless of the medium that you're using, if you're really, I guess, if you're really practiced in making work, but also if you're really in tune with the type of work that you want to make and how you think about it, I think your kind of aesthetic or your approach will just be seen. Call it a style, obviously, but I think it will just be seen throughout all of your work, regardless of what medium you use. So I like, yeah, I tend not to kind of really stick to any particular medium. It just, I feel like it would be a little bit too like, oh, I need to go and do something else, you know? Like,
Yeah, too limiting. I love that
yeah,
you do so much, so many different styles. I'm going to pop myself back here. Lee, it has been amazing. There's a lot of love for you and for what you've been teaching in the
yeah.
chat. Yeah, thank you so much.
Oh, come on, guys.
I've put your website there so people can go and buy a print if they feel like it, and
Thank
check
you.
out the rest of your work. I just have loved being here with you and to yeah, seeing everyone sketching along. Thank you so much, Lee. It's been amazing.
Oh man, guys, like Bethan, thank you so much, man. And yeah, just guys, I really yeah, this is nice, man. Like I said, I'll just talk for ages if you let me. But yeah, it's always nice to it's nice just to get an excuse to kind of communicate with people about the work and just yeah, just share some thoughts. So I really appreciate. I'm just sorry. I'm also reading. I've just seen the chat, so I'm
Yep.
just reading it. So I'm reading the messages, guys. Thank you so much. Like this is yeah, it's been a really nice time.
Yeah, I'm going to put the chat underneath your video that's going to live on the International Nature Journaling Week website. I'll put the chat there um, so that people can read that as well. Thank you, Lee. Have a good day,
Oh,
everybody. Have a good sleep for those down south where I am. Thank you. Take good care,
bye, guys.
Lee.